You buying any lumber?
Yes.
What are you paying?
$34 for good stuff.
$34 the best you can do?
Well, that seems to be the going price.
You are listening to a town officer and a sawmill operator dickering over the price of lumber in the upper Winooski Valley of Vermont, where the people act.
The People Act. These are true stories, tape recorded in communities across the nation, where people are working together to build a better future. The People Act is presented by the Television Radio Workshop, established by the Ford Foundation and produced by the CBS Radio Network. Every voice and sound is real. No actors are used. Now here again is your narrator, the noted reporter, Robert Trout.
These are the days when the world seems beset by giant problems, overwhelming issues, crucial decisions. So we thought you might like to hear this story of a problem that is small as far as world problems go, though it looms large in the minds of the people of a beautiful mountain valley in Vermont. Whatever you think of its size, there's a real point in it, a point that may even bear on world problems. This is the story we tape recorded in the upper Winooski Valley of Vermont.
Right hand side, that's A. Left hand side, down this way. And come back.
The upper Winooski Valley of Vermont, near the capital city of Montpelier. Green valleys, rolling hills, sparkling little towns, each dominated by a church steeple. There's a square dance going on up in Plainfield, a special kind of dance. Listen. That dance is fun, but it's more. It's a symbol, a clue to what's happening in the valley. You see, the people of the valley are like most Vermonters. They're individualists. That's their right, but it made problems for them. Big problems for 6 little towns.
Cabot, Marshfield, Plainfield, East Montpelier, Calais, and Woodbury. It is a pretty hard job to find a common ground where we can work on. Because we have in Vermont that old system of town lines, which are sacred and they should never be crossed.
Town lines are sacred and should never be crossed. That was their problem. Do your darndest for your own town, but pay no attention to the town just a mile or two down the road. And the pride in your own town is fierce, unquestioned. Take old Pliny Smith. We asked him what he thinks of his hometown of Cabot.
Cabot is the best town in all Vermont. Yes, they pay their bills and live happy, and good churches, good schools, good people. No better town I know of. Why is it a good town? Well, it's in Vermont.
Town lines and town pride, and something else that made for trouble. Crow Thompson up in South Woodbury told us about it.
See, they're conservative. And anything that's, well, it's just about like a feller I know. I won't mention no names. And he had a horse barn. And his dad before him had this business. And he had 3 trucks by this time. And he said, we ought to have a garage, the boys did, for these trucks. Yes, he said we do, but he said, I hate to spend the money to build one. Well, they said, why don't we tear the inside out of that horse barn that your dad and you have kept your horses in and use it for a garage? Well, he said, that's the way Father had it, and that's the way I'll have it.
Town lines, town pride, resistance to change. The only trouble was nature didn't recognize town lines. We went down to Farrington's sawmill, and Mr. Farrington told us what was happening to the timber in the valley.
I buy most of my lumber, all of the farmers. Some farmers cut according to the forester, but this load right here is taking everything. He didn't leave even. He's taken everything that'll make a 2x4, which is down to 4 inches.
Each farmer was cutting the timber in his own town as he saw fit. No one looked at the whole picture, all the timber in the valley, what was happening to it. There was something else. The upper Winooski River threads its way through the valley. Each of the 6 towns looked at it as their own river, poured their wastes into it, didn't think of the towns downstream. The result? Listen.
Well, there's Lindwall. He left. He sold his tourist cabins because the water was polluted, the Winooski River.
But you could see the trouble town lines caused, best of all, in the schools. A small town, population several hundred, can support a small school and a single teacher. Come look in on one of these one-room schools. This one is in South Woodbury. It's recess time. The 35 children who make up grades 1 through 6 are playing in the cleared field that serves as a schoolyard. Recess is over. Mrs. Thompson calls the class in.
All right, come on in. We're all coming in now. Lois?
Up the 3 wooden stairs to the schoolroom. The schoolhouse once used to be a church. Inside the schoolroom, Mrs. Thompson has 6 grades to take care of. She has her hands full.
How many of you 5 fifth graders still have arithmetic to do? All right, get it done as soon as possible and get them changed to your spelling. 3rd grade people better take spelling immediately. 1st grade, as soon as you're all here, you 3 boys, we're going to say some nursery rhymes. So you'll be saying them over to yourself. If there are any of those pages on the board, you 4 second graders, that you haven't got done, please get those done.
The entire 1st grade, a grand total of 3 boys, recites Little Boy Blue.
Let's see if you can say it together.
The sheep in the mountain, the cats in the corn. Where's that little boy that looks at the sheep? I'm the haycock fast asleep.
One-room schools for the children of each of the 6 towns. Modern highways link the 6 towns. School buses can bring the children together to central schools, but still the town lines and resistance to change stood in the way. Some people in the valley saw the problem clearly. Mrs. Morse, for example.
Oh, the one-room school is our biggest headache around here because we have about 35 pupils jammed into a small room, perhaps 3 times as large as this kitchen, and it just isn't right.
It just wasn't right. The schools, the timber, the river, other problems too. It's strange how a little event, something no one would pay attention to at the time, can lead to big changes. There was a little event in the Winooski Valley about 10 years ago. Farmer Merton Lyons got to talking with Evelyn Bates, a student at Goddard College in Plainfield, one of the 6 towns. They thought it might not be a bad idea if college students and faculty and townspeople got together for a study club to talk things over. A small group of 10 met in Mrs. Holt's kitchen. Young Gordon Holt should have been in bed asleep, but he was curious, and from his upstairs room stuck his head through the ventilator in the kitchen ceiling to eavesdrop on the grown-ups below. Mrs. Holt caught sight of him.
Gordon, get your head out of that ventilator and go to bed now.
Oh, Mom, I want to watch.
You go right to sleep now.
Evelyn Bates opened the meeting.
As you know, we've all thought it would be a good idea to have a study club to study some of the problems that are confronting the world today, and us in particular, perhaps. We thought we would start with the problem of how people live, what their standards of living are.
Well, I'd say we have a pretty good start on the standard of living here in this country, a good standard of living.
As we get nearer the larger centers, doesn't the standard of living seem to increase?
One of the things that bothers me is when you read about a standard of living is they measure it in terms of bathtubs or telephones or things of that sort.
What about this question of bathtubs? Is that a good measure? And have we any way of knowing how many bathtubs we have here in Vermont, for instance, in comparison with the bathtubs in Yugoslavia or some other place?
Well, what difference does it make whether a person takes a bath in the bathtub or in a wash tub on Saturday night?
It kind of surprised them the way the study club idea took hold. The townspeople took their meetings seriously, even assigned homework. Now, farmers are busy people. There are chores to be done, cows to be milked. That's the milk squirting into the pail. Arthur Spooner had the cows to milk one evening, but he also had to do his homework. So he milked the cows while Mrs. Spooner read him his assignment on Denmark. Bessie, the cow, interrupted once or twice.
When one talks about education in Denmark, one is talking about something so different from what the word means to us that it is difficult to portray one's meaning.
Read me that part about education again.
When one talks about education in Denmark, one is talking about something so different from what the word means to us that it is difficult to portray one's meaning. The very fundamentals are reversed. Fundamentals which relate to the object of education, the way it is to be, the rights which inhere in the individual and the place of the school and the teacher.
That's it, stand still.
For 2 years, the study club discussed world problems. Then someone said, why don't we talk about our own problems right here in the 6 towns? Practically the first thing they discussed was the schools.
I would like a school where people's children weren't forced to sit in desks so many hours of the day.
What kinds of things do you think children want in school?
For one thing, they can't see the use of this way back history. All the dates and the data of what went on years and years ago. It may have a use, I can't see what it is.
Heard Carolyn Coburn tonight sputtering about Latin. She asked her brother Dave what use there was in taking Latin. Dave said, well, I've taken it 2 years and haven't found out yet.
The discussions didn't lead to anything definite right away, but there were changes. Listen to Arthur Spooner.
Well, I used to think that the one-room school was the proper way to teach children, but I think I was wrong now. I think it's much better if the children go each one in their separate room and have one teacher to teach that particular class rather than for the teacher to have to teach all the classes.
A change in idea is an important thing. It leads to discussions, to more ideas. More and more people began to talk about the schools. There were arguments on both sides, and the arguments were aired in the typical New England way of open debate of the issues. Dr. Royce Pitkin, one of the townspeople who returned to Plainfield to found Goddard College, debated George Carpenter, representative to the state legislature from the town of Cabot.
Now, I submit, Mr. Chairman, that it's unreasonable to expect that you can provide a desirable kind of an educational program with a high school of only 25 students. You can't have enough teachers, you can't provide the equipment. And even if you could, by some magic, get them together, there wouldn't be money enough in any one of these towns to pay for that kind of a program.
Mr. Chairman, while there have been many changes since the Constitution of Vermont was made, human nature has not changed. And while we may have reduced the distance between centers of population by the automobile and other modern gadgets, we have not changed the attitude of the people toward the communities in which they live in rural areas. And our minds are still small-town minds. And we must keep those institutions near so that our people can feel that they actually are a part of them.
Now, Mr. Chairman, let me interrupt here. It's quite possible to keep them within the control of the small towns. Just because we get 2 or 3 towns working together to have one high school doesn't mean that the school boards aren't going to control, and therefore the people aren't going to control the school boards.
I have yet to have proven to me that the size of the institution proves or measures the quality of the education provided.
The interesting thing about the debates and discussions was that neither side was trying to push its ideas down the throats of the other. Earl Curtis put it this way.
There's an interesting fact in all of this work on the school that it has been very democratic. There are leaders in the community who have their thoughts and feelings about this. However, all meetings and all efforts to do anything have been brought forth in a meeting of the community with the people participating, and only those things that the group at that time decides they want to do are done. That is, it's the people's wish that's being done. That's why it's slow work.
They were progressing slowly. At this moment, the question of a central high school serving all 6 towns is still being debated. But other school developments show that the one-room grade school is on the way out. The town of Marshfield, for example, closed down its one-room schools, put in a school bus, and gathered up all its children into a central school. They put in a workshop, a library, an expanded activities program. They had special projects and assemblies like this one.
This afternoon, we have a little program that we're going to present to you in connection with our pet show.
Chick, chick here and a chick, chick there. Here a chick, there a chick,
Improvements in schools were important. What was even more important was the slow change in the way people were thinking about their towns and the valley. You could see the change when the Upper Winooski Valley Development Association was formed. Representatives of all 6 towns were present. Freeman Walker was elected president.
Well, I guess that this meeting of the Upper Winooski Development Association can come to order. We seem to be all here for a meeting. And I guess might as well start by having the clerk read the minutes of the
The
previous
Development
meeting.
Association, for the first time, looked at the problems of the valley as a whole. They called on state officials for advice. They surveyed the valley. They tackled the lumber problem. They called in State Forester Ed Walker to advise them on their forests.
Well, the thing to consider in management of these timberlands in Washington County is the fact that a great many people are letting a great deal of their material go to waste. We aren't harvesting 1/5 of what could be harvested simply because we are letting a great deal of this material simply rot as it stands.
Sparked by the Development Association, town forests were organized to preserve timber, and before too long, the town forests began to yield a cash crop. Plainfield's first select man, Harry Maxfield, went down to the mill to dicker over the price.
You buying any lumber?
Yes.
What are you paying?
$34 for good stuff.
$34, the best you can do?
Well, that seems to be the going price.
Oh, well, we've shopped around. You got to make it even money.
Well, how about $35?
That sounds better. A lot better to us.
They got their price. Mr. Maxfield reported on the transaction to the next town meeting.
The lumber we sold from the Plainfield Town Forest was just under 15,000 feet at $35 a thousand. It was $526.
They went to work on water pollution and acted to get the state to classify their river. They discovered wonderful little lakes, ideal for a vacation area, and moved to develop them. They organized a summer recreation program for the children of all 6 towns of the valley. They started a local art program. But the material accomplishments are not the big story in the Upper Winooski Valley. The big story is the change in spirit, the change in ideas, the crumbling of the town line. And you could see that change in spirit most clearly when the 6 towns did something together they had never done before. They ran the first country fair ever held in the valley. Everyone in the 6 towns was invited. Everyone was asked to work on the fair. Arthur Bartlett got a surprise when he asked for volunteers to sell tickets.
I was asked if I could get some volunteers to help register the people that attended the fair at Plainfield. And at first I had an idea that I couldn't. But I contacted 13 people, and of the 13 people that I contacted, 12 of them went and took part.
The fair opened with a bang. Hundreds of the townspeople from all the 6 towns streamed through the fair grounds.
Good morning, everybody. The Upper Winooski Development Association welcomes you to the Upper Winooski Fair, held on the grounds of Goddard College in Plainfield, Vermont. The morning programs are as follows.
They had a miniature railroad they called the Winooski Wobbler and rode the kids around the fairgrounds.
Okay, kids, come on, let's take a ride. We're going on a Winooski Wobbler. Round trip is 10 cents. Let's go. All aboard. Everybody get aboard now.
There were dangers, too. The fair committee put out a warning.
The Fair Committee asks your attention to the following announcement. Please keep away from the lumber pile. Right over there, to my right, Do so at your own risk. There's a bee's nest in there.
The fair was fun, but it was more than fun. The 6 towns turned to look at their neglected historical traditions and rediscovered the Green Mountain Boys of the Revolution and the Bluecoats of the Civil War. They dressed up in period costumes and sang the old song.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah, the men will cheer.
They displayed their best crops, their fine cattle, their new paintings, their arts and crafts projects. And they had a horse show. One of the horses wouldn't take the jump.
All right, turn him right around. Give him the heel now. Turn him right around toward the jump. Use those legs. That's what they're made for. That shows a brilliant horse. Any horse a darn fool to jump when he can go around.
And last of all, they danced an old-time square dance to an old-time tune. A special dance called the Green Mountain Volunteers.
Line up for Green Mountain Volunteers. Right hand side, Jesse. Left hand side, down the swing. And come back.
The Green Mountain Volunteers. The people of Cabot, Marshfield, and Plainfield, East Montpelier, Calais, and Woodbury. The people of the 6 towns of the upper Winooski Valley. The special meaning of that dance. They're breaking down that old town line idea. They're working together to build a better future. But they're doing it their way, at their own speed, for the common good. Freeman Walker can tell you how they're doing it.
Vermonters are rugged individualists, all right, and it's they get it, you might say, from the country. Each one has had to stand on his own feet. It's healthy growth. It has to start from the grassroots. You can't take and expect to start it full grown. It's something that we've got to work out ourselves. And it isn't a financial backing that is the criterion. It's got to be from within. We've got to start where we are and work on.
You have just heard The People Act, narrated by Robert Trout, a documentary series presented by the Television Radio Workshop established by the Ford Foundation and produced by the CBS Radio Network. These programs are under the sponsorship of the National Committee for the People Act. Here is the committee's director, Elmore McKee.
The men and women in this story have shown the power of free people to solve their own problem. We do not suggest that the details of this story can be applied everywhere. But if you feel this story has a bearing upon a problem in your community and you would like to do something about it, won't you write us at the People Act Center, State College, Pennsylvania. Dr. Milton S. Eisenhower and his associates there will try to put you in touch with someone in your vicinity qualified to consult with you. And if you wish a script or a recording for use in your community or information about discussion groups, please write us at the People Act Center, State College, Pennsylvania.
The People Act is produced and edited by Irving Gitlin. Tape recordings for today's program were made in Vermont by reporter Dave Moore. Original music by Norman Lockwood, conducted by Alfredo Antonini. Join us again next week when The People Act in Chicago, Illinois.